Even though these are 2-move combinations, you can still pick up where another combination begins, turning them into 4, 5, 6, 7, and even 8+ move combinations. If you're steps ahead, you're gonna win. It's rare that you submit your opponent or get a sweep on your first try. It is with the use of combinations and understanding the transitions where you will be able to expose your opponent's mistakes. When you go for a hip bump, it's common for your opponent to expose a Kimura. It's also common for them to leave their neck up so you can attack for a guillotine. If you hip bump hard and they post their arm back, it leaves an opening for you to pull your leg out so you can get a triangle choke. A high percentage combination from the hip bump sweep is to come right back and attack for an Omoplata. When you go for a Kimura, if your opponent decides to posture up, you can hit them with the hip bump sweep. Also, since their arm is bent back already, it's very easy to switch to an Omoplata. And just like the combination with the hip bump, lots of times your opponent will leave their neck open so you can attack for a guillotine. If your opponent tucks his hand under when you go for the Kimura, straighten your arm through and then attack his back. If your opponent extends his arm out when you go for the Kimura, just throw it right over your head and then attack the back. Even with Kimuras, you have possible wrist locks sitting right there for you. From the Omoplata, it's very common for your opponent's wrist to be exposed so you can go for a wrist lock. If when you go for the Omoplata, your opponent postures right back up, throw your other leg over so you can attack right for a triangle choke. If your opponent can posture up and he's able to get his arm back through, you might be able to attack for an armbar right away. A high percentage of sneaky sweep when your opponent postures back is for you to immediately do a hard back roll so you can sweep them over. After you go for the Omoplata, you can clear your opponent's arm out so then you can attack the back and then work from there. It's very common for your opponent to roll out when you go for the Omoplata, so then you can get the side control position right away. After you go for the Omoplata, if you hook under their near side leg and then you roll like a log, you can probably sweep your opponent over. When your opponent grabs your wrist when you go for the guillotine, use your other hand to grab his wrist so you can throw your leg over and attack for a triangle. Really sneaky. Also, when your opponent defends the guillotine, use your arm to get the underhook and then use the same side foot to sweep them over so you can get the crucifix sweep. Never forget that you can always go for wrist locks when you have an armbar. It's also extremely common for your opponent's other arm to be exposed for an Omoplata. You can also attack that same arm that's exposed with a Kimura. If your opponent pulls his arm out when you go for the armbar, always be prepared to throw your leg over for a triangle choke. And if they decide to grab your head to stack into you, go for the arm crush. One of the best sweeps off of the armbar is the pendulum sweep, or what I call the flower sweep. If your opponent stacks into you, you could spin underneath them, push their head with your shin, tip them over, and then finish the armbar from there. A tricky armbar when your opponent pulls his arm out is to switch to the other side and attack the other arm. Many times you could finish an armbar from the triangle position. When you have trouble finishing the triangle, it's very easy to switch to an armbar. And if your opponent grabs the back of your head, you can attack right for an arm crush. If they start bending their arm back, then attack their arm for a Kimura. And also from that same situation, you have the option to switch right to an Omoplata. When they tuck their arm to the side, lots of times they leave their neck exposed for the fist choke. Also, when they bend their arm to the side, you can switch to the reverse triangle, squeeze your knees together, and get the choke that way. And just like with a lot of other moves, with the triangle choke, wrist locks are sitting right there for you. My favorite thing to do when my opponent postures up to defend is to push with my hands over my head and sweep them. When you do the cross collar choke and they defend by answering the phone, push their elbow by and then take their back. Also, when you go for the cross collar choke and they answer the phone to defend, push their elbow by, trap their arm, and then get the pendulum sweep. For more videos and to get a first look at new upcoming videos, please subscribe to my YouTube channel.